The following program contains shocking portrayals of action. If you suffer from cowardice, Randall may not be right for you. Check with your video game supplier.
Speaking the truth when others hold their tongues. Wrestling for justice with left-wingers and crocodiles. Resisting the temptation to keep the peace at any price. The only talk show host who writes his own theme music, Randall Terry.
Hey, friend. I just thought since I was going to be preaching the gospel, I should go to the IRS and get my new muzzle fitted on me. I mean, after all, any good Christian leader is going to ask the Internal Revenue Service what they can and can't say, right? We're going to have another intense blockbuster program. This is the third in a series on Roe versus Wade, tax-exempt groups, changing the law, fraudulent fundraising from various groups, and we're going to deal with the Waterloo of a lot of so-called pro-life leaders, namely babies and human pesticides. You're going to want to watch this. You might even want to tell your friends to watch it. But first, a word of wisdom from a friend I haven't seen in a while, Rusty Cowpoke.
These leaders of them 501c3 groups, heck, they're strutting around like they've been riding some Breamable for 8 seconds. Whoa. Heck, they ain't even mutton busting. You can Google that too. Mutton busting.
Welcome to the broadcast, friend. Think with me how many heroes in the scriptures and throughout church history rebuked kings and princes by name. For example, John the Baptist, the most famous man, the most blessed man, the forerunner of Christ, he rebuked Herod by name. He didn't say, there's someone somewhere, I'm not saying who's sleeping with his brother's wife. I'm just saying it might not ethically be sound. No. He said, Herod, it is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife while he yet lives. Think of the prophet Jeremiah rebuking kings, 3 kings in succession. Think of the prophet Elijah rebuking Ahab and Jezebel by name, rebuking them for things going on in their private lives as well. Think of church history. Thomas More and St. John Fisher both had their heads cut off by Henry VIII because they refused to cave into him, and they rebuked him by name. St. Justin Martyr rebuked Caesars in succession and finally was executed, but he rebuked them by name, he admonished them by name, and told them what to do, please hear me, with issues of public policy. He told them, these are the rules that you need to change. And he said to them, you need to fear God, you need to serve God. God did not give you unrestricted tyrannical power over his people. And he rebuked them by name. Now, the reason that this is critical is because God gave us the scriptures to explain him to us, to show the way for us to find salvation, for training in godliness, and obviously other things as well. But if we are going to know what it means to serve God, we have to look at the scriptural admonitions to us, and we have to look at the biblical examples that God has left to us. When the prophet went in and rebuked David and said, you are the man, it jarred David to the core of his soul. He rebuked him to his face. He rebuked him by name. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because there are literally thousands, perhaps tens or even hundreds of thousands of pro-life ministries Christian religious right ministries, pro-family ministries that have forsaken, literally turned their backs on the biblical mandate and the biblical examples to rebuke kings and princes by name. Because they have taken Uncle Sam's, the federal government's, the IRS's tax-exempt status, all right, 501c3 in the tax code, they have agreed with the government to not name names. It's not Christian, friend. It's a form of treachery. So here's what I want you to do. Stay with me through this break because I'm going to give you two little illustrations. Peter and Paul coming back and speaking to preachers and pastors and bishops and priests. And then Jesus himself showing up at some great convention. What would they say to current Christian leaders about them bowing their knee to Caesar regarding what they do and don't say? I ask you, who is Lord of the church? Christ or Caesar? In fact, I'm going to read one question from a viewer, and I'll take the break. Nah, let's take the break. I'll read it when I come back. This is good. Don't go away.
Randall and I discovered a big hole in Arizona. Randall wanted to call it a big ditch, hole. Darn, I can't remember.
Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you.
You know what I gotta say about Randall Terry? Just push play! Ow!
Welcome back to the program, friend. Got this in the mailbag. My wife and I were at a dinner meeting last week to hear blank, a clergyman, of Relevant Radio. He said that he couldn't talk about politicians because of Relevant Radio's tax status. When you go to work for a nonprofit organization, do you lose your right of free speech? And then he went on to ask, he had two questions, I'll read one of them for your audience. He said, did God pass a law that clergy should not admonish sinful politicians? Did God pass a law that clergy should not admonish, rebuke, sinful politicians? I don't know. Let's picture a great convention. Clergy gathering from all over America. the famous radio preachers, the famous TV preachers, bishops and archbishops. They come, and then Peter and Paul show up at the meeting and say, my brothers, my sisters who are here, preachers, teachers, missionaries. We know that for nearly 1950 years, the church heralded the gospel of Jesus and rebuked kings by name. However, even though we are grieving the loss of life through the killing of babies, and we're all pro-life here, we are concerned that if you violate that tax-exempt status, that contributions to the church will go down. And we all know that we've got to have money to preach the gospel and to educate people. So we recommend that you obey Caesar and disregard the example that we left you and 1900 years of Christian heroes left you. Yes, put money ahead of the gospel. I don't think so. Or can you picture Peter in heaven? You know, the one who was crucified upside down, looking at a pastor in a pulpit saying, let me get this right. You're shaking in your boots in your pulpit. You're afraid to say the truth about this wicked politician because of your tax-exempt status? Wow, I was crucified upside down. I feel your pain, sir. I feel your pain. No. Or how about worse than this? Let's say that God himself, Jesus, came to the meeting and said, sons, daughters, I am the author of life, and I grieve the loss of millions of babies, as do you, my faithful servants. However, if Caesar tells you to not rebuke him or Ahab or Jezebel or Manasseh or any other wicked king or prince, and certainly not President Obama, if Caesar tells you not to rebuke these people by name, I want you to obey. Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, your obedience and your silence, and render unto God the things that are God's, your money. I mean, forgive me, because that is borderline blasphemy. I'm doing it to make an illustration. God would not say that. God would say, you are my shepherds. You are my spokesman. I have commanded you to tell the truth. And if you read Ezekiel chapter 3, God said, in fact, you know what? I should just read it. Do you mind if I read a little passage to you? You're going to like this. The 501c3 has become basically hush money. It's what people take so that they don't rebuke politicians by name. And God said, Son of man, I've made you a watchman on the wall. I want you to warn people. Whenever you hear a word from my mouth, give them warning from me. If I say to the wicked, you will surely die, and you give him no warning, nor speak to warn the wicked from his wicked way in order to save his life, that wicked man will die in his iniquity, but his blood I will require at your hand. Friend, God takes this all very seriously. In the next segment, I'm going to talk with you about the Waterloo of these various pro-life, pro-family, religious right groups. But before I go, I want to urge you. Number one, get this book. We won't get fooled again. This is a phenomenal expose of the fundraising scams on the religious right. And I'm telling you, you have been giving to organizations who are squandering your money. All right? They are not doing what they say that they will do because they can't. If they say to you, give us money and we're going to fight abortion or fight homosexual marriage or fight to get us out of the UN or whatever it is, and they're a 501c3 tax-exempt group, it's a scam. It's a fraud. Because by law, they cannot rebuke evil politicians by name. They cannot promote good politicians by name. And they can only use a fraction of their revenue to even lobby to change the laws. The second thing I want to offer to you, and by the way, both of these come, you can have them for a gift of any size, and if you can't afford anything, just pay shipping and handling. We'll send it to you for free. You just have to pay the shipping and handling. A 14-part television series called Insurrect the Next, which means Revolution Against the Slaughter of the Innocent. We'll send you this 14-part television series along with 5 workbooks and one teacher's manual, okay? $4 shipping and handling for the book, $8 shipping and handling for this magnificent series. It's the history of social revolution. If you want to prevail, if you want to be a part of the church militant that prevails against the wickedness that is engulfing our country, then you have to have the right philosophy, the right tools, the right tactics. Well, clearly the junk that's been pushed on us by the religious right for the last 40 years has been pretty useless. But if you want to see the victories of the past, ending slavery, women's voting rights, ending child labor, ending the Jim Crow laws and segregation, if you want to see the victories of the past, they provide us with the blueprint for the future. Get these items. See the place on the screen to get them. Get them. All right, when we come back, I'm going to talk about children and human pesticides. Don't go away.
Oh, dear children, when you grow up, you want to grow up in House of Islam, which is peace. You do not want to grow up in the house of war. Listen to Muhammad.
Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you.
Don't try to be subtle or clever. Use a pile driver. Hit the point once. Then come back and hit it a second time. A tremendous whack. Sir Winston Churchill.
Welcome back, friend. By the way, this book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, if you want to order it online from Amazon or from a bookstore, it's $22 plus tax, plus shipping and handling, all right? I bought 1,000 of these to give away if need be, because I want you to not get fooled again. And if you would like to give us a contribution to help us with our work, with our broadcast, we appreciate it. All right. Do you want to know a reason? This, I got to tell you right now, this is going to sting a little bit. So just stay with me, okay? You want to know one reason why so few Christians really fight against child killing? I mean, if you're even a remotely devout Christian, you'll say, yes, I'm pro-life. But if somebody tried to convict you of taking away a woman's right to choose, would you be found guilty or not guilty based on the evidence of what you've done, right? One of the reasons that so few Christians really fight against child killing, and again, I'm going to tell you this is going to be painful, is because we secretly sympathize with the reasons that women kill their babies. Well, what do you mean, man? Well, just hear me out. When someone kills their baby, when someone has an abortion, why do they do it? They don't want a baby. When Christians who are married use birth control, why are they doing it? They don't want to have a baby. You see, in the Bible, children are always spoken of as a blessing. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Blessed is the man whose wife will be like a fruitful vine and have children, children and children. Like arrows in the hands of a mighty warrior are the children of one's youth. The only eternal thing that God makes today are human beings. God entrusts us with new creations, new human beings made in His image. And so if someone said to you, you can choose $100,000 or a new baby, what would you take? I mean, what's of more value, a human life or the $100,000? The anti-child attitude that permeates Western civilization and our culture has so infected the church that we have forsaken the biblical Christian view of children, that they're a blessing, that they're to be cherished, that they're to be desired, that they're part of the marriage covenant itself. We've forsaken that to say, I want a better job, I want a bigger house, I want to buy a car, I don't want the burden of children right now. Those are all the reasons that women killed their babies. I'm in school, we've already got 2 kids. The outrage that should be present within the Christian community is absent because so many of us are contracepting. I want you to think about what I'm saying. I want you to pray about what I'm saying. Because children are a blessing from God. They're not a curse. And when you see someone with 4 or 5 kids, do you say, oh, you're so blessed? Or do you say, don't you know where these come from? Can't you buy a TV? If you see someone with a large family, rejoice with them. They're a rich, rich family. I'll be right back, and I'm going to talk to you about human pesticides and pro-life leaders, so-called, who are cowardly and treacherous. Don't go away.
If the Lord had not been my help, my soul would soon have dwelt in the land of silence. When I thought, my foot slips, thy steadfast love, O Lord, held me up.
Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you.
Put the spark of life in you, but the gift of untold worth was stolen away before your birth. I'm crying for you, baby. Before you left your mother's womb, they took your life away.
Welcome back, friend. What man, what woman gets to the end of his or her life and says, wish I didn't have all these kids. Wish I had more money. No. People are glad to have their sons and daughters gathered around them and hopefully their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And money pales in insignificance at that point. I want to make something very clear. There's a difference between contraception and abortifacients, human pesticides. But some people have confused the two. True contraception prevents conception, contra against conception. Spermicide, various barrier methods. This is contraception. I've given you some ethical arguments why it's not a good plan. That said, I want to talk for these closing moments about human pesticides and the cowardice and treachery of so-called pro-life leaders. Depo-Provera, the patch, IUDs, and yes, the pill, are all human pesticides. They are created by humans to terminate human beings' lives. So if a woman is on the pill, It makes her not ovulate usually, but sometimes she will ovulate. She can get pregnant, but then the pill is designed to make the uterine lining slough off in the monthly cycle and flush that new human being out. All right? Human life, scientifically and biblically, begins at conception. That's when it begins. So once conception happens, you have a new human life that must be protected by law. That means we have to outlaw these human pesticides. Randall, are you saying that you want to make the IUD and the morning after pill and RU486 and Plan B and the pill illegal? Yes, because they're human pesticides. And someday I hope that these manufacturers are put on trial for their lives maybe, because they created chemicals designed to kill innocent human beings. We've tried people like that before. Does Nuremberg ring a bell? But in closing, I want to say this. If you're a pro-life leader, pro-life activist, and you don't have the guts to say what I'm saying right now, what you know to be true, then you are a coward, you are committing treachery, and you need to step aside. Just get out of the movement because you're an impediment. You're part of the problem. Let another take your office, someone who is more worthy, someone who is more honest, someone who has more courage.